Hello guys, welcome to our channel. Today we are going to delve into the movie named Crawlspace. The movie starts with a guy chopping down a tree and selling it to a Russian person in exchange for pills. Then, as he's leaving, two masked men show up. One of them, Dooley, pulls the guy out of his truck and starts hitting him. When the guy insults Dooley's mother, the other masked man, Sterling, reveals his face and shoots the truck driver in the chest. Dooley takes the driver's pills, but he's not happy with what they find in the bag. Near the mill owner, Tim Whitner, he hides a duffel bag filled with money in a remote corner of a tight space beneath his solitary cabin. Later, a man named Robert is spending time with his son when he receives a call from a client who's having trouble making payments. Robert offers to let the client pay in installments. Afterwards, he heads to work, but can only afford to put $10 worth of gas in his tank. Two police officers, Sheriff Higgin and Deputy Jordan, are nearby in their police car and greet him. He vents his financial woes to them, and they try to reassure him that good people can overcome such challenges. But Robert remains skeptical. As he continues driving into a forest, his truck breaks down on an unpaved road. He tried to contact his wife, Carrie, but his phone died. He walks the remaining half-mile to the cabin of his client on the call, Tim Whitner. Once there, he repositions his equipment behind the cabin and prepares to enter a crawl space wearing a mask and headlamp. In the crawl space, Robert eventually reaches a corner of the cabin with access to the plumbing. He puts on his headphones and begins working. Meanwhile, Dooley and Sterling bring Tim to his house and aggressively interrogate him about his illegal lodging activities. They demand all his money, but Tim refuses. They resort to violence, beating him. Tim seizes an opportunity and attempts to bite one of the men's ears, but he is overpowered. Unbeknownst to them, Robert is working beneath the cabin's floor and hears the commotion. He observes one of the men pulling out a gun and threatening Tim. When the man shoots Tim, Robert witnesses the horrifying scene. Filled with fear, he starts to crawl away and accidentally stumbles upon the bag of money. The two men begin searching for the money on their own. Robert decides to emerge from the crawl space in an attempt to escape the murder scene, but to his misfortune, both men spot him. One of them strikes him with a crossbow arrow. In a panic, Robert retreats into the crawl space while the other man starts shooting in his direction. At that moment, Dooley grabs hold of Robert's leg, but Robert manages to kick him away. Afterwards, Robert barricades the hatch with a wrench to keep Dooley at bay. Meanwhile, the police and FBI reach a secluded area where the tracks indicate that a whole tree has been transported. Agent Mour inquires about the closest lumber mill, and Deputy Jordan informs her that it's Tim Whitner's place. Back at Whitner's place, Julian Sterling and Dooley are holed up in the kitchen, communicating with Robert through the floor. Sterling tries to convince Robert that he's a decent guy and offers to let him go if he hands over the money. Robert, understandably wary, questions how he could trust them, especially since Sterling just shot someone. Sterling reminds him that they can wait for him to die and then they'll find a way down to the money. Dooley pleads to go to the hospital for his injured hand, but the best Sterling can do is pour some bourbon on it. At the police station, Agent Mour informs Sheriff Higgin that Tim Whitner's financial records suggest he might be involved in some criminal activity at his lumber mill. The sheriff is skeptical and doesn't want to tarnish Whitner's reputation without concrete evidence. Agent Mour points out that any wrongdoing would likely be well hidden, and Deputy Jordan agrees that they should investigate the lead provided by the agent. Back in the crawl space, Robert prepares for surgery. He retrieves a hacksaw from his toolbox and carefully cuts through the bolt shaft lodged in his shoulder. He then removes the remaining part of the bolt from behind and proceeds to use his welding torch to heat a circular metal tin until it's red hot. He cauterizes the wound entrance to stop the bleeding. Meanwhile, Agent Mour and Deputy Jordan arrive at the lumber mill and start questioning the people there. Unfortunately, nobody is willing to provide any information. They even question Robert's wife, Carrie, who has come to pick up the part-time bookkeeping work she's been doing for the mill from her home. At Whitner's cabin, Sterling checks on Robert, who is still alive. Sterling engages in conversation with Robert to pinpoint his location on the cabin floor by listening to the sound of his voice. Robert attempts to call Carrie, but the call fails. Sterling inquires about what Robert needs to feel comfortable. Robert suggests that Sterling and Dooley should leave for an hour, promising that he'll escape and leave the money behind. However, Sterling is not convinced by this proposal and fires a shot through the floor, narrowly missing Robert. Sterling calls out again, warning that he can outlast him. Here, Robert makes a significant mistake by inadvertently confirming to Sterling and Dooley that the money is indeed down there with him. This confirmation further solidifies their belief that the money is hidden in the crawlspace. At Whitner's lumber mill, Deputy Jordan informs Agent Mour that the mill has been in operation for 70 years. Carrie provides some financial data, but when Mour points out inconsistencies, Carrie becomes defensive and insists on speaking with Whitner before allowing them access to everything. She then leaves. Agent Mour proceeds to question another lumber worker named Gerald, whom Deputy Jordan describes as a good kid who sometimes makes poor choices. When Mour identifies herself as an FBI agent, Gerald abruptly flees through the mill, prompting Agent Mour to give chase. He is cut off when Deputy Jordan, who took a shortcut, intercepts Gerald. During the encounter, Agent Mour discovers drugs on Gerald, using them as leverage to make him talk. Deputy Jordan contacts his father, Sheriff Higgin, and informs him that Gerald is involved in something typical of his behavior. Under pressure, Gerald confesses that he obtained the drugs from a Russian individual named Vlad. Back at the house, Sterling gets high once more and instructs Dooley to figure out a way to open the hatch. However, Dooley is too terrified of Robert's knife, so Sterling gives him one of his own. Below, Robert takes his turn to hunt, listening as Sterling tries to provoke him. He then takes a drill and burrows up right through Sterling's foot. Sterling opens fire, managing to fire off 5 shots, but in the process, he pulls his foot off the drill bit. Robert warns him not to fire the gun again, and Sterling complies. Robert sets $20,000 on fire and tosses it up through the floor. Sterling rushes to stomp out the flames, but instead, his pant leg and boot catch on fire. Dooley, seemingly enjoying the situation, quickly extinguishes the flames with a blanket while Robert laughs maniacally. At Carrie's house, she reviews Whitner's financial records and realizes that Agent Mour was correct about the irregularities. She calls Deputy Jordan and informs her that she has discovered several hidden accounts belonging to Whitner. Carrie also attempts to reach Robert, but is unable to contact him. Back at the cabin, Robert threatens to destroy all the money unless Sterling and Dooley leave. He proposes that he'll leave some money for them if they return in a couple of hours. In response, Sterling reloads his revolver and recklessly fires 3 shots randomly into the floor, nearly hitting Robert. Frustrated, Robert sets another $20,000 on fire. Dooley seizes the opportunity to pull Robert off his feet and slam him into the crawlspace ceiling. Robert grabs the drill and turns it on, prompting Sterling to pull Dooley out of harm's way as the drill pierces the floor. Finally, Sterling decides to call for reinforcements. In the town, Deputy Jordan stops by Carrie's house, where she expresses her desire to go to Whitner's cabin because she believes Robert is there. The deputy informs her that he's heading that way to question Whitner, and they decide to drive there together. Back at Whitner's cabin, Dooley suddenly spots a double-barrel shotgun hanging above the fireplace. He searches around and finds 5 shotgun shells, which he tosses carelessly at Sterling. Sterling proceeds to load the gun, and the two of them head outside. As they depart, Robert reaches through the floor and grabs one of the shotgun shells. Meanwhile, at the police station, Agent Mour and Sheriff Higgin continue to question Gerald. Gerald admits to being part of a skeleton crew that cuts down a couple of old-growth trees and delivers them to Whitner's mill, where they are compensated with OxyContin pills. Outside the cabin, Sterling connects a hose to a gas valve and limps over to insert the tube into one of the crawlspace's ventilation grates. Inside the crawlspace, Robert realizes the danger and holds his breath, periodically yanking open a pipe along the crawlspace ceiling to obtain brief oxygen bursts. Sterling, growing impatient, sets a piece of moss on fire and pushes it through the ventilation grate. Fearing for his life, Robert hastily grabs the duffel bag of cash and wraps himself in a blanket along the far wall. The gas ignites, that blows the hatch open and fills the crawlspace with flames. Sterling reassures Dooley and asks him to go inside. Dooley crawls inside with the shotgun as Dooley calls out to Sterling that he has killed Robert. Robert springs from behind and strangles Dooley with a piece of loose internet cord. It only incapacitates him. Robert then finds zip ties and uses them to restrain Dooley. He attempts to retrieve Dooley's gun, but it's broken when he tosses it aside. Noticing a nearby pipe, Robert uses his tools, a shotgun shell, and a bolt from his shoulder to make a pipe rifle. Deputy Jordan and Carrie finally arrive at the cabin. The deputy takes out her weapon and starts securing the area. As Sterling emerges, she chastises him for messing up her plan, emphasizing that Robert is just a plumber and it should have been an easy cash grab. Sterling counters that Robert must have a military background. Deputy Jordan decides to holster her gun, which Carrie notices. The sheriff contacts them over the radio, and Carrie responds, informing him and Agent Mour to hurry to the Whitner cabin. Deputy Jordan tells Sterling she will handle the situation, heads to the patrol car, and pulls Carrie out to use as a bargaining tool. This provokes Sterling, and in a fit of anger, he shoots Deputy Jordan with her gun. Agent Mour and Sheriff Higgins hear the gunshot and immediately call for backup units to report to the location. Sterling seizes Carrie and calls out to Robert. Left with no other viable choice, Robert emerges from the crawlspace, clutching the money bag. Robert claims that he has drenched the money bag in paint and threatens to set it on fire if Sterling harms Carrie. As the standoff continues, Robert eventually turns off the torch. He hurls the duffel at Sterling, who flings Carrie aside to catch it. Suddenly, from behind, Sheriff Higgins shoots Sterling in the leg. Before Sterling can respond, Robert fires his makeshift pipe rifle, impaling Sterling through the throat with a crossbow bolt. Deputy Jordan was arrested on the scene and duly was treated so that the police could punish them through legal ways. The following day, Robert plays with his son and goes out to check his mailbox. He finds a parcel full of money. He was shocked to see it and started looking around. His eyes caught up with Sheriff Higgins, who dropped off the money to help Robert with his financial conditions. He and his wife smiled with relief. The movie ends here.